Hey and welcome back to a new video. On my desk I have an RTX 5090 Aorus Master that I bought shortly after launch for developing a water block for this card. And at a time when the 5090 came to the market, there were a lot of news articles about what's new on which 5090. And there was one, I think from Tech Power Up, it was talking about having a liquid metal on the Aorus Master cards or the Aorus cards. But it was then clarified that it's only the water-cooled cards, so the custom water-cooled card and the AIO-cooled card would feature liquid metal. Which is interesting because the AIO-cooled card would come with a non-nickel plated AIO, which is like really not good for applying liquid metal on it. Whereas the Aorus Master is nickel plated when it comes to the heatsink, which is more suitable for applying liquid metal to it. And they were advertising that this card is using a metal composite thermal interface material. Whatever that means. To me, it sounds like it's just a normal thermal paste, but it could be also something different. I sometimes also saw those hybrid solutions where it's like a normal thermal paste basically mixed up with liquid metal, and I wasn't quite sure what's on here, and that's what I want to find out in today's video, and also then test how much it actually helps to replace this kind of thermal interface material with liquid metal on a 5090 that's air-cooled. You need a lot of storage, but you don't want to spend a fortune, then the Hetzner storage box is the perfect choice for you. Hetzner is one of Germany's leading providers for hosting and infrastructure, powerful, GDPR compliant and focused on sustainability. With Storage Box you get flexible online storage that you can access from anywhere, using FTP, SMB, rsync or WebDAV. And your data runs on dedicated servers in European data centers. And the best of all, you can upgrade or downgrade anytime depending on your needs. Whether for backups, data storage or project archives. With Hetzner, you're always on the safe side. Learn more in the link in the description below. I used this Aorus Master before for a couple of tests, but I never opened it. As you can see, the seal is still untouched. Gigabyte is using this feature again with LEDs and a couple of blades, which makes it look a bit weird on camera. Live, it looks much better than what I can see, at least on my small screen right now on the camera. I'm not quite sure how it will look like eventually in the YouTube video. There's also a small screen built in right there. And for the moment, I will just download all the software, install the driver, and then we want to get some baseline numbers on the temperature. I just finished 15 minutes of Thermic with the Aorus Master and I'm positively surprised. I'm very pleased with both the coil whine, which is not really existing, and also the noise level of the fans. It's quite pleasant with the fans spinning at not even 1300 RPM. The card is running with a fan speed on all three fans with 1280 RPM, which equals 40%. So for the second test, after applying liquid metal, I will just set the card again to 40%, which equals the, as in this case, normal load condition. So we are then able to compare the same scenario with about 78 to 79 degrees Celsius under load. That's the temperature we're seeing in the stock condition. And now it's time to open the card and then investigate what kind of thermal interface material they're actually using. There's a lot of putty on this card on both the PCB side and also the cooler side, which is fine because we know that putty works quite well. And the thermal conductivity of this material is pretty nice, and especially it is helpful in terms of getting the right contact pressure on the core. Because it's very easy to squeeze on like the inductors, on the power stages and all that, and you can have the main amount of pressure on the core, which will give us usually a good pressure and good contact and thus good thermal results. You might be able to spot that this is or should be a hybrid thermal interface material, as I expected. So that's a mixture between a normal thermal paste and liquid metal. So you might be able to see around the core that there are some small drops that look like liquid metal. It's a bit easier to see on the cooler side imprint. If you try to pay attention on the top side of the imprint, then you might be able to spot some of the small drops that look like liquid metal. This is also kind of why I wanted to investigate this, because I saw a picture of this on OCUK a while ago where the user was surprised because he was expecting to see real liquid metal, but then instead you're seeing this hybrid thing. I'm not sure if Gigabyte changed to this metal composite advertising afterwards, or if this was just miscommunication, or if I understood it wrong. But some people apparently were under the impression that these cards come with liquid metal, but it's not real liquid metal. It's like this hybrid thing of mixing a thermal paste with liquid metal. That is something we also tried almost like 10 years ago, mixing just normal Cryonaut with liquid metal to see what it does. It definitely increases the thermal conductivity in theory, but just on application, the results were not really different versus just a normal thermal paste, but the negative aspects are still there. It's still conductive, it's corrosive, and you can see those small liquid metal drops. And if this makes contact with an SNB, for example, it will eat up the tin and it will bridge it, or it can cause a short. So you have to prepare all the hardware accordingly with like coating on the cooler side and also coating on the SMDs, for example, to cover them, to protect them from the liquid metal. But I think that's also what they did on the Aorus Master, at least after probably we cleaned it, we should be able to see some sort of coating, something around the SMDs. One thing that's not so perfect, if you take a look at the bottom left of the chip, you can see that something squeezed out, and you can see a little bit, some like shiny liquid metal, which means that, you know, it's not like the Founders Edition where they added a real like rubber seal around the chip to protect it. You can see it even better on this side where it's squeezed out. And I think on there, you know, with this kind of solution, if the amount is not absolutely perfect, if it's a little bit too much, like in this case, it easily squeezes out. If it squeezes out a bit more, then there's definitely a risk of damaging some components. So we'll take these with us to the microscope to investigate this a little bit better. We are now investigating the PCB side under the microscope. The cooler side is just too thick to fit under there, but here we can already see the NVIDIA logo underneath. And what looks a bit like dirt around it, that's just the residue or the remains of the thermal paste that was applied. We will first look on the area on the top right of the GPU. And looking under this 20 times magnified, we can easily spot some of the shiny areas that highlight the gallium-indium alloy, so that's the liquid metal. In this area we can see a lot of this shiny liquid metal. Also here there's a droplet, bigger one down there, here, and also in that area you can clearly see it. So it's definitely a hybrid paste, like a mix between a normal thermal paste and the gallium-indium liquid metal. And now the area on the bottom left, also here we can clearly see traces of the liquid metal that was in this case pushed out, I think, a little bit further than what was originally intended. I will now scrape off a little bit of the thermal interface material from the cooler side, put it onto this stub that will then be placed in our SEM. It's made from copper, so it's suitable for adding some gallium-indium alloy in it. And then we should be able to get some even better images, I think. And you can clearly see the liquid metal on there. Now transferred to the stub, you can see the liquid metal even more clearly. And it also shows that it's not just like a small thing, a small amount that's in there. It definitely also forms bigger drops. So the round thing is our copper stub where we applied the hybrid paste. In the center, it's mostly like hybrid mixture between thermal paste and the liquid metal. And then here on top and here on the bottom, very visible liquid metal droplets. It's also not that easy to investigate a paste under a scanning electron microscope because it's not perfectly conductive, so it's charging some particles. That's why you see those changes in the intensity of how light it is, and then it's turning dark. That's depending on if the material is charging or not, because the electron beam. But here we see a good mix between some of the solid particles, and I think this in the center should be liquid metal, so I guess we can maybe zoom in on that area. I picked an area a little bit further on the right because that's just a bit thinner and it doesn't charge as badly, but we can still see some solid particles, and in the center I think that's liquid metal. And I'm now running an EDS analysis, and then we should be able to see what kind of material we're looking at. And this is how the EDS analysis looks like. So we get the different maps on the left, and then on the right we see all the different elements like zinc and oxygen, copper, aluminium, nitrogen, gallium, indium, and all of these. And then just a reminder of how the image looked like. So we have those structures in the center, and if we scroll down to gallium and indium, then we can clearly see that it just aligns with what we're expecting, like these I would say, shapes together, gallium and indium would form the liquid metal, and you can see that they're just in the same position. Just confirms that we are seeing a liquid metal alloy here. Then combined in this image, we can also see a lot of green, which is zinc, but most likely together with oxygen, zinc oxide, very common in the thermal interface materials. Then this drop on the bottom is also quite interesting. We can see a lot of aluminium here and also oxygen, so that would kind of make sense that this is probably a drop of aluminium oxide, which is also very commonly used, like also these tiny drops right here in thermal interface materials. Took some time to take a real image. We can see this round shape, that's the aluminium oxide we just looked at with all those tiny particles on top, that's zinc oxide. And then what's sitting all on top right here, that is the liquid metal. Now that things are confirmed, we know it's a hybrid liquid metal paste, we can wipe it off, remove it, clean it, and then freshly apply normal liquid metal. There's definitely also more liquid metal inside than you might think at a first second. It's also kind of odd the way they did this. Like they applied like so much of this hybrid paste. They definitely protected the SMDs with some sort of, I don't know, protection stuff. But yeah, like using a seal would have been better, I guess. It's kind of odd. It's not that simple to remove, but kind of doable. So just some dry cloth first, and then with some cleaning alcohol, and pretty good to go. Before I will apply the liquid metal, I will first apply the GPU Guard from us, because it will help to seal off the liquid metal so it doesn't squeeze out, and also that it doesn't oxidize as quickly, so the longevity is much better. In most normal cases, it would also protect the SMDs underneath, which wouldn't be super necessary in this case, because you can see there is some sort of protection already in place, but just to seal it off and also to protect it from oxygen, that will be much better. First, removing the white layer, just use the fingernail a bit to make sure the red part is sticking to the transfer film. And then I'm sticking it around the GPU. I will now gently press the PCB towards the cooler to get an imprint and see where I have to apply the liquid metal also on the cooler side. Already assembled everything back together and also already running Thermark. I will keep this running for about 20 minutes and then we will check what kind of temperature we will see after the TIM swap. First impression, at least when it comes to the contact, looks alright. So after a couple of minutes, I can see at 40% fan speed about 70 degrees Celsius. Now it just depends how high the temperature raises. Now after 19 minutes, I can see the temperature doesn't change anymore. I'm seeing around 74 degrees Celsius, which is 4 to 5 degrees Celsius improvement over the hybrid paste by just using normal liquid metal. The result shows again that those hybrid pastes are not better than just a traditional liquid metal, which makes sense. Liquid metal just has better conductivity and has no solid particles, so the bond line thickness is just thinner. So the overall result using normal liquid metal will just be better. And mixing liquid metal with a normal paste that is worse in terms of conductivity makes sense that the result is just closer to a traditional thermal paste. The only advantage of this material is that it's easier to apply in a mass production application, like making a graphics card. But apart from that, doesn't really make a lot of sense to use it because you still have the same downsides. You have to protect the SMDs around it. You have to make sure that it's not squeezing out. It's a little bit on the edge on this card. You could see that it's squeezing out a little bit at some area. Not problematic on this specific card, but it could be if the amount is just a little bit too much. And you could definitely see liquid metal droplets in some of the sample that we took out. So there is definitely the risk, if it comes out, that you can short or damage something. But if you were ever thinking of replacing the thermal paste on your card with a liquid metal, like on a 5090 air-cooled, I guess about 4 to 5 degrees Celsius improvement is what you can overall expect. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye-bye.